They did not believe you would actually do it. That is the truth at the center of everything that has happened since you went no contact. Not that they miss you though, something in them does. Not that they regret what they did, though something in them is beginning to. The primary thing happening inside the narcissist right now is disbelief. A deep, disorienting, almost paralyzing shock that the person they were most certain would never leave has not only left, but has stayed gone. They made a decision, a final one. They pushed too far, withdrew too completely, discarded too casually, or simply refused one time too many to offer what you needed. And in that moment, they were not worried. They were not calculating the risk. They were operating from the assumption that had served them reliably throughout the entire relationship. That you would absorb it, that you would process your pain privately and return to availability publicly. That the door you had opened so many times before would open again, because in their experience it always had. They were wrong, and they are living with that wrongness now in ways they do not have the vocabulary to express and would never give you the satisfaction of knowing. Let us talk about what is actually happening inside them. Not to give you false hope, not to pull you back towards something that has already cost you more than it ever gave you, but because understanding what no contact does to a narcissistic personality is part of understanding why your decision was right, why it needs to stay in place, and why the pressure you are about to feel to reverse it is coming and must be prepared for. A narcissist builds their entire psychological world around a specific kind of certainty, the certainty of control. Not always loud, domineering, obvious control. Sometimes it is subtle, the quiet confidence that they know how people will respond to them, that they can predict behavior, that they understand the emotional architecture of the people in their lives well enough to navigate any situation in a way that keeps them central, keeps them protected, and keeps the dynamic moving in their favor. You were a significant part of that certainty. They had studied you, maybe without realizing that is what they were doing, but they had. They knew what made you stay. They knew what made you doubt yourself. They knew which words softened you and which silences made you anxious and which moments of apparent vulnerability made you set aside your own pain to focus on theirs. They had a map of you, and that map made them feel safe in a way they could never fully acknowledge, because acknowledging it would require admitting how much they actually needed you. Narcissists do not admit need. Need is the thing their entire personality structure was built to deny. But the need was always there, and no contact has done something to that need that they were completely unprepared for. It has made it visible. To themselves, in the private hours they cannot escape. In the 3 a.m. waking with a weight on their chest they cannot explain away. In the strange flatness of days that should feel like freedom but instead feel like something essential has been removed from the atmosphere. They cannot name what is wrong, because naming it would require the kind of honest self-examination they have spent a lifetime engineering their personality to avoid. But something is wrong and they know it. The map they had of you is now useless. Every prediction they could make about your behavior has failed. The person who always came back has not come back. The person who always answered has stopped answering. The person who made them feel certain in their bones that they would never truly face consequences for how they treated people has become the living proof that consequences are real after all. This is not a small psychological event for a narcissist. It is a confrontation with something they have been successfully avoiding for most of their adult life. The possibility that their behavior has a cost they actually have to pay. The universe works through consequences, not as cruelty, as instruction, as the mechanism through which human beings who have refused every softer lesson finally encounter the truth they have been running from. The narcissist in your life has been running from a specific truth for a very long time, that they are not exempt, that their behavior matters, that the people they treat as permanent fixtures rather than as human beings with limits have those limits for a reason. Your no contact is that truth arriving in a form they cannot dismiss, minimize, refrain, or charm their way out of. Now let us talk about what they will do with it. Because they will do something. Staying inside the discomfort of genuine consequence is not something a narcissist does willingly or for very long without attempting to resolve it. And the way they attempt to resolve it will tell you everything you need to stay the course. Some will reach out, not always directly at first. A message that seems innocent. A piece of information they suddenly need to share with you. A question only you could answer. A memory they claim appeared out of nowhere that they felt compelled to mention. These openings are not accidents. They are tests. Gentle ones designed to measure whether the door has softened, whether the silence has made you more available rather than less, whether the version of you who always responded is still accessible underneath the version of you who went quiet. Do not be surprised by how reasonable it sounds. Do not be surprised if some part of you responds to it with a warmth you thought you had moved past. That warmth is not evidence that you were wrong to leave. It is evidence that you are a human being who genuinely cared about someone, and that caring does not evaporate simply because you made the right decision. Feeling something when they reach out does not mean you must respond to what you feel. Others will not reach out directly. They will move through the people around you, checking whether your name comes up, asking careful questions disguised as casual conversation, monitoring what they can still see of your life, and analyzing every detail for signs of how you are really doing. They are looking for proof that the no contact is costing you more than it is costing them, that you are suffering in your silence, that the decision is making you miserable enough to reconsider. Do not give them that proof, not out of pride, out of protection. Because here is what is happening in this season that is far more important than anything the narcissist is experiencing. You are being rebuilt, not the version of you that existed before the relationship. That version had openings in it that made the dynamic possible in the first place. Something deeper is being constructed now. A version with different foundations, one that knows the difference between love and emotional dependency. One that has learned to recognize control, dressed as connection, manipulation dressed as vulnerability, and punishment dressed as distance. One whose discernment has been sharpened by everything this relationship taught at great personal cost. That rebuilding requires exactly what no contact provides: space, silence. The absence of the constant emotional noise that kept you reactive, kept you focused outward, kept you so occupied with managing the dynamic that you had no energy left to hear what your own soul was trying to tell you. In the quiet, something is talking. Your own interior wisdom, the deep knowing that was always present, but that the chaos of the relationship kept buried under urgency, confusion, and the exhausting work of keeping yourself emotionally afloat inside a dynamic that was never designed for your well-being. That wisdom is showing you things about yourself that the noise of the relationship kept hidden. The places where your own wounds made you susceptible. The beliefs about your worth that allowed you to accept less than you deserved for longer than was healthy. The patterns in yourself that preceded this relationship and that left unexamined would follow you into the next one. This is not self-blame. This is the most honest and ultimately the most liberating form of self-examination available to you. Because the work of this season is not simply moving away from something harmful, it is moving towards something whole. And wholeness requires that you understand not just what they did to you, but what you now need to address within yourself. The healing available to you right now is deeper than the wound that brought you here. More permanent than anything the narcissist could offer, even if they found the willingness to offer it. But that healing has a condition. It requires you to stay in the process. To resist the temptation to interrupt what is being built by reopening what has been closing. Every time a person breaks no contact prematurely, they do not simply return to the dynamic they left. They return weaker, with more evidence to the narcissist that the boundaries are negotiable, with more confusion inside themselves about what they actually deserve. With the rebuilding process interrupted at precisely the point where it was becoming most significant. The narcissist is counting on your discomfort. They are waiting for the moment when the silence feels worse than the noise. When loneliness feels more unbearable than the familiar pain of the relationship. When the uncertainty of an open future feels more frightening than the certain misery of what was known. Do not let that moment make your decision for you. Loneliness in this season is not a sign that you made the wrong choice. It is the price of transition, of moving between what was familiar and what is being prepared. It is the feeling of a soul that has left one place and not yet arrived at the next one. That in-between space is uncomfortable in ways that are real and valid and do not need to be minimized. But discomfort is not direction. Your pain in this moment is not the universe telling you to go back. It is your healing telling you it is in progress. There is something else you must understand about what your no contact is doing beyond what it is doing to the narcissist, or even what it is doing for your own healing. It is a declaration, not to them, to yourself. To the deepest part of you that spent months or years quietly wondering whether you actually believed you deserved better or whether that was simply something you told yourself. No contact is the moment belief became behavior. The moment your actions finally matched what your soul had been trying to communicate long before your conscious mind was willing to receive it. That matters more than you currently understand. Because the decisions we make that require real courage, that cost us something significant, that go against the pull of everything familiar and comfortable and known, those decisions become the foundation of who we are going forward. They become the evidence we carry inside ourselves that we are capable of honoring our own worth even when everything in us is pulling toward the easier path. You made them live with their final decision. The one they made assuming you would eventually undo it for them. The one they issued from a place of confidence that your love was more available than your boundaries were firm. The one that was supposed to be temporary leverage but became permanent consequence. And in making them live with it, you have done something for yourself that no amount of forgiving, returning, hoping, or waiting ever produced. You have shown yourself who you are now, not who you were when the relationship started, not who you became at your most depleted in the middle of it. Who you are now, after the fire, after the long, private, unglamorous work of choosing yourself, when everything in you wanted to choose the familiar instead. Someone who knows the difference between a love worth fighting for and a cycle worth ending. Someone whose capacity for feeling runs deep enough that walking away costs you something real, which means you are not hardened, you are not bitter, you are not closed, you are clear. There is a significant difference between closed and clear. Closed people cannot love again. Clear people simply cannot be deceived in the same way twice. Closed is a wound that never healed. Clear is a wound that healed honest. You are healing honest. And the narcissist, somewhere in the private hours they would never let you witness, is beginning to understand something they spent the entire relationship convinced they would never have to face. That you were not a door, you were a person with a limit. And the limit was real. They found it. And now they have to live there. In the silence they created, in the absence they assumed would never become permanent. In the consequence of a final decision they made certain you would eventually reverse. You did not reverse it. And that single fact is doing more work in their psychology. More honest confrontation with themselves, more genuine reckoning with what they lost and why they lost it, than anything you said during all the conversations, all the explanations, all the attempts to make them understand what they were doing to you. Silence, it turns out, is the loudest thing you have ever said to them. Stay in it, not forever necessarily, not out of punishment or pride or the desire to make them suffer, but for as long as your own healing requires, for as long as the rebuilding needs, for as long as it takes to become so firmly rooted in your own wholeness that no reach, no message, no carefully constructed moment of apparent vulnerability on their part can pull you back into a dynamic your soul has already moved beyond. You have come too far to go back to what broke you. And somewhere underneath all the disbelief, underneath the shock of a consequence they genuinely did not see coming, the narcissist knows that too. They just hoped you did not.